Now, for nearly 2 decades, Nigeria was locked out of receiving payments on PayPal, a decision that pushed digital entrepreneurs to the margins and forced local innovation to rise in its place. Today, PayPal's return through a partnership with Paga has reopened old wounds, sparking a heated debate over trust, memory, and economic self-respect. At the same time, the Central Bank of Nigeria has upgraded fintech giants like Opay, Moneypoint, and Kuda to national microfinance banks, signaling a new phase for Nigeria's digital finance ecosystem. So the big question is this: as global players return and local platforms grow stronger, is Nigeria finally in control of its digital financial future? Or are we at risk of repeating old mistakes? Shata is here in the studio to help us analyze this. You're welcome to Business Express, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
PayPal's decision to finally allow Nigerians receive international payments has sparked more anger than applause. Why is this development so emotionally charged for many Nigerians?
Yeah, I think the reason is not far-fetched. First, there's been a lot of bottleneck, when you talk about cross-border payments, which means remittances, both in and out of the country, right? And at a time when Nigeria were doing a lot of trade, we're doing a lot of transactions as well, cross-border. There's a bottleneck of people saying they want to go to the bank to queue to fill the Form F, and the rest. So everybody was thinking about a more logical way and creative and innovative way, to carry out transaction. PayPal would have come in handy at that time, but there were a lot of, challenges, and some of them are regulatory, of course. Today, I would say that they have deemed the system viable. They've deemed the system also clean enough for them to relaunch their products back into Nigeria. And we need to commend not just the operators, but also the regulators for sanitizing the ecosystem. We have what you call the IMTO license, which is exactly what Paga is leveraging, to have this handshake with PayPal. And it will no doubt, expand a lot of cross-border payment for us, because two sectors in the fintech space that is yet to be tapped is both the cross-border payment and the last mile. And when I say the last mile, I'm talking about the unbanked and the underserved Nigerians. So we still have a lot of gaps, between these two market share. And I think PayPal will come in handy to also take a huge amount of the market share and compete in the industry.
All right, for nearly 20 years, Nigerians were excluded from PayPal's receiving services. How did that exclusion shape today's fintech ecosystem and the mindset of digital entrepreneurs?
The ordinary Nigerian is a very tough person, so tough situation demands, tough solutions as well. So we're able to crack the nut with technology. We looked and sourced for alternatives, leveraging other channels, to carry out transaction. And we've had a lot of fintech organizations who had actually partnered with local players to deliver these services, right? But I think that why PayPal's own is really, really strong and impactful is because of the brand name they've already established in the global scene. So for us, what we have done in the industry, like I said, is to look for a more creative way to service our customers' needs and ensuring that we also keep into the regulatory compliance to ensure that we are not exposing, customers to risk, and the system is also being watched, and there's an oversight, from Central Bank of Nigeria.
But do you see PayPal's re-entry as genuine inclusion or simply a late attempt to tap into a market Nigerian fintechs have already built?
Like I said, they will definitely have their own market share, because when I was talking earlier in my opening glee, I talked about the two markets that are untapped. The first one I talked about was the cross-border payment, and the second one was, of course, the last mile. If you look at it, right, it's difficult for Nigerians to easily just send money across the border. In fact, it's easier for me to send money to probably US, UK, right, than for me to send money to my neighbor in Ghana or in Kenya, for instance. We are in the same continent. And oftentimes in different fora, I've always emphasized on this to say, look, we come together and talk, but we don't collaborate. We don't co-create. And if we don't allow our technology to speak to each other, so first, before you even talk about the cross-border payment and the entry point, there are three key layers that we have to talk about in what we call DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure, which of course every country today is holding strongly on and using that to establish the footprint for digital financial ecosystem. The first arm of it is digital identity. So first, you need to be able to KYC, that's know your customer, know the person that you're dealing with, right? So if KYC and digital identity is sorted, right, it's easier for you to be able to share data. It's easier for you to now go to the second layer, which is payment system. It's easier for you to tap into the payment ecosystem, right? Whether you want to call it closed loop or open loop system. Then the other part, the last one, of course, is data sharing, right? So if you're able to aggregate the three layers of DPI together, it will go a long way to solve most of these, bottlenecks that we have. Of course, backed with regulatory compliance, because everything we are doing in the digital space is watched, is being watched, and is being regulated by different regulatory entities we have.
Now, there are concerns about PayPal's history of freezing accounts and weak dispute resolution for Nigerians. How real are these risks, and should users be worried?
Yeah, I would say no, and that's the reason why they are having a collaboration with Paga. Paga, as a local player, understands, the regulatory framework here. They understand consumer protection. They understand data. They also understand the need that the fact that they need to ensure that they sanitize, the system for PayPal to tap in. So, for PayPal coming to have that, strategic alliance with Paga, there's a whole lot that has actually happened back end before the announcement. Trust me. So, beyond technology speaking to each other, there's also the cross-referencing of all of the regulatory framework that will be dotted behind closed doors. And of course, regulators would have served as umpire, and they will also, be aware of this marriage before the marriage is finally completed. So I feel that Nigerians do not really have much to fear, because PayPal is going to be leveraging a lot of, data that Paga has. And the first entry point, of course, will be to have an account with Paga, while that handshake goes with PayPal. So PayPal will just be like the conduit pipe where, transaction, ferry through different continents seamlessly.
Some Nigerians are calling for a boycott in favor of homegrown platforms. Is this a reasonable case of economic patriotism, or could it limit our opportunities?
Yeah, like I told you, I said, proud to PayPal announcing their entry into Nigeria. We have local solutions that we have leveraged on, right, to actually, have this transaction happen. Now, beyond just the fiat part of it, where you say, okay, the settlement between among all the central banks that will be involved, behind closed doors to settle some of these funds. What we've had ab initio is actually using SWIFT, which is more or less like an email. People wouldn't know that, like using an email to guarantee payment across countries. But right now we are leveraging technology to service that, which means what we intend to do is to make it real-time and quick. What you used to have is what they call T+3 or 3+7, which means you do transaction, you receive your transaction in 3 days, or you either receive your transaction in 7 days. It takes 1 week to clear, right? But right now, you are looking at a situation whereby you carry out your transaction now, and your transaction is happening real-time. The person at the other end is receiving value, right? So that's why I said there's a whole lot that's actually taking place that people will not really understand. But again, it's the choice of the customers. It's the choice of the consumers. So consumers have options to pick from in the industry. It depends on what your preference is and the brand that is serving you better. So consumers really have options. It's not a monopoly business. So I don't really think that we should be, saying that everybody should boycott, the marriage or boycott the platform or the product. It is up to every consumer to choose the platform they want to use to carry out transaction. Seamless. One thing I feel consumers should be wary about is this platform protected by regulatory entities? If it is, then you need to understand what goes on behind closed doors before you, venture into carrying out transaction on those platforms. But do your due diligence as a customer, and it's a free market and an open market, for everybody to go into.
All right. The Central Bank of Nigeria recently upgraded fintechs like OPay, MoneyPoint, and Kuda to micro finance banks. What does this change in practical terms for customers and the wider economy?
I think it further reinforces confidence, right? People now know that you can trust this brand because there's been that fear. When they hear about fintech, everybody developed cold feet and said, no, they are not regulated entity and all of that. So now this further reinforces that, these platforms or these companies are now fully regulated by the Central Bank of Nigeria and insured by NDIC, of course, right? Even though they are not money deposit banks, right? Yet they are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria and they are insured by, NDIC. So I think it's going to boost a lot of financial inclusion activities across board. It's going to also boost a lot of confidence. It's going to also boost people adopting, this platform. Already they are adopting the platform, and that's the reason why you can see the trend in the transaction volume and value that we have. Like if you want to look at 2 years ago, we did close to about, I think, 1.2 quadrillion in electronic transaction. Last year, we did close to about, I think, close to 2 quadrillion in electronic transaction. This year is going to even be much more than what you have year on year. So if you want to compare the growth rate of POS transaction, right, from 2 years ago to last year, first quarter, it grew by above 200%, right, which is about close to, I think, 10 trillion in transaction. So that tells you the kind of impact that these big players in the industry are actually leveraging on. One of the brands, I don't want to mention them, in the brands that you mentioned, is currently processing about 14 billion naira every day in volume of transaction. Bigger than most banks in Nigeria, even bigger than the Fugas. The Fugas are the First Bank, the Access Bank, Union Bank, GT, and UBA, right? So these are brands that are well established, but there's a brand that is currently doing far more than that. And trust me, it's not Uhuru yet as well. Because if you look at the electronic transaction that we have, and you want to juxtapose that with cash in circulation, CBN has said it that up until last year, we still have close to about 5.1 trillion naira in cash in circulation. You see, despite the fact that we have strong adoption rates in electronic transaction, we still have huge cash reliance. And I can tell you why that is prevalent. Because we've not gotten that solution that can almost replace cash. But I'm aware that there's a solution that currently exists that will actually, cater for that. It's a solution that works on a feature phone. You don't need internet, you don't need data, you don't need credit to carry out transaction on a feature phone. And you don't need to dial a USSD as well. So you are getting access into the platform almost for free, which is like having access to your money in your pocket and spending it anywhere you like. So This is exactly what I feel, this opportunity and this expansion will provide. It will create a lot of innovative product out there and create a lot of challenges for more fintech platforms to come up with creative payment solution to cater for the underserved and the underbanked populations of Nigeria.
All right. Mr. Liu Shata, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us on Business Express.
Thank you, as always, for having me.